Hey everybody, what's up fam? This is Tree from treeoflogic.com and I have a very special honored guest today that I'm going to interview. I think out of all of my interviews I have done on my channel, this is one I'm very excited about because I get to learn in the process of actually asking questions where my guest can teach you. This is Mr. Jared Taylor. Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Listen, you have been a hot topic lately. It turns out that the website that's called Century Foundation, 2 years ago, they uploaded your video, and I think the video is called Race Differences in Intelligence. Now, I've already known about this video. Actually, I have it on my playlist, and it turns out that this was the first video that YouTube censored and put it in the limited state. Now, what's so fascinating about this is that before YouTube censored the video, meaning that, you know, you can't like it, you can't dislike it, it doesn't give you referrals. It just put it in a limited state where you have to actually press continue to put it on there. Now, I checked the Social Blade because I remember distinctly the last time I saw that video, it was 22,000 views. Now it's well over 400,000 views. How does it feel to know that your video has actually basically gone viral because it was one of the first videos to be censored?
Well, it's called the Streisand Effect, apparently. If something is forbidden, if people want you to stay away from something, it attracts attention to it. And that comes from the fact that Barbara Streisand apparently had a very fancy, swanky house in Malibu, and she didn't want people learning about it because it was so over the top.
Right.
And when word got out that she didn't want people to know about it, of course, everybody clamored to find out about it. And so it went on Google Earth and everything else. And so when you forbid something, it increases its popularity. Now, I was lucky, though, because mine was one of the first, if not the first, to get this quarantine treatment, and people wrote about it. But there are going to be many excellent first-rate videos that are going to be quarantined, get deep-sixed like this, and nobody's going to hear about them. So it's really a soft way of censoring. Instead of just pulling something down completely, you make it almost impossible. YouTube makes it almost impossible to find. You can't embed it.
Right.
You can't comment on it. You can't have any idea how many people have seen it. And so they're really sort of casting it into the outer darkness.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think more videos, or actually, let me ask you something. Has any more of your videos been put into this state like this besides that one that you're aware of?
There was one about Mo Brooks and what he called the war on white people that was taken down, completely down for a while.
Oh.
But it appears to be back up. But that was some time ago. YouTube from time to time has simply taken our videos off of YouTube. And this is the first time, though, that they've implemented this policy of putting things in quarantine, and they seem to have been particularly attracted to our video.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think because, it's hard to speculate. One thing that I do not understand is why they're taking a video that has no emotional content at all. It just sets out the evidence for the view that there is a genetic contribution to racial differences in average IQ. And it doesn't take a so-called white supremacist position, that is to say, the idea that whites are the smartest people around. The evidence is very, very powerful to suggest that Asians are actually smarter than white people, and we go into that evidence as well.
Right.
It seems to me that YouTube has the idea that just talking about IQ differences between the races in a sensible way is potentially inflammatory and will upset people and could lead to violence and who knows what, lynching, maybe return to slavery. What the
Lynching!
Who knows what they think? But that seems to terrify them. I've since heard from other people who have made equally sober analyses of the evidence on this very same subject, who've had their videos cast into the outer darkness as well. So this just seems to be a subject that YouTube is very, very nervous about.
Have your channel, American Renaissance, your YouTube channel, has it been personally attacked before now? Like, have you had any problems with strikes and with any kind of punishment for the content? And your content isn't edgy. It's just, actually, it's well researched and it's opinionated. But it's something that liberals don't like, or the left definitely hates. Have you ever experienced anything prior to this, prior to it being quarantined and limited state by YouTube?
Yes, well, I'll tell you. In fact, this very video, it was taken down about 2 years ago.
Oh, that's why it was uploaded. Okay.
But then it was re-uploaded, and it was the re-uploaded version that they took this dislike to and quarantined it. And there was another video that we put up about Mo Brooks, Congressman Mo Brooks. He's a Southern congressman, and he had said something about there being a war on whites. And we had a commentary on that. And that at one time was pulled down, but then it's reappeared too. YouTube seems to operate in very whimsical, unpredictable ways. You never know exactly what they're going to do.
Right, right.
Now, this particular policy on their part, insofar as they make their quarantined videos visible if you know exactly where to hunt for them, if you have the URL, it seems to me this is rather stupid on their part, because there's going to be a large collection. There's probably going to be somebody who makes an index of these quarantined videos, and you can actually go look at them, and you will see just how reasonable many of them are. I think it would have been smarter for YouTube simply to pull them down and say, oh, this stuff was hateful. Oh, this stuff was horrible. And people would just have to take their word for it. Now they can go check them out if they have a way to get to them, and they'll see that they're not horrible, they're not racist, they're not emotional, they're just laying out the facts. There was another one that this happened to recently. It's simply about the kind of sexual aggression that these so-called refugees in the Middle East have been wreaking all across Western Europe. It was just a collection of film clips, interviews, news stories, just saying, okay, there was this rape that took place here. A little boy in a swimming pool was gang raped by these Muslims.
Yep,
just
I remember
facts.
that. Mm-hmm.
But the facts are too terrifying for YouTube.
I know that personally. My first strike was reporting on the Muslim terrorists that did the truck of peace and during the Berlin Christmas market. And I got a strike for that, for talking about it. But I've always been on YouTube's and Merkel's radar, because I used to live in Germany for 5 years, and I came back because, diversity wasn't working well for me, okay, over there. And so when I came back over here, I began to tell the story, which put me on their radar, and that's when I got punished as well with my first strike, and haven't talked about that. So let me ask you something. It actually censored me to the point where I'm so afraid. I have some very valuable videos on my channel. I don't want to lose them and have them delete my channel. So they did censor me to the point where I stopped talking about the refugees, quote unquote refugees, really the migrants, financial migrants. I stopped talking about Germany in general. Did you cater your content because of this attack, because of their limited their new terms of services, or that they were going to hate your views because they hate facts? Did you just keep your content the same?
We have not really modified our content with the idea that it might be censored by YouTube. Since that time, we haven't done a video on the question of race differences in IQ or race differences in anything else. But that's only because I thought I'd covered that territory adequately in the first one.
You
did.
They
didn't lie.
Yeah, you did.
Now, I may try to redo some of those ideas and see what happens. But as I say, YouTube is very whimsical and unpredictable. They don't act in a systematic way, as far as I can tell. And I've heard of some groups. I know that there is. I think it's a group called Jihad Watch.
Yes.
Their videos were taken down. A fellow named Robert Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
Their videos were. No, maybe it was PayPal that
Yeah,
took away.
PayPal had taken away their merchant account, and after the backlash, they gave it back to them. But
That's right.
but I
It's not
believe
YouTube.
yeah, it wasn't YouTube. But if my understanding, they were so upset by it that they said, you know what, no, thank you, PayPal.
Right.
They didn't decide to go back to PayPal after the big backlash.
Right. I thought that was great. They said, no, we're not going to run the risk of doing business with you guys ever again. No, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
But, it's been PayPal, it's been Mailchimp has been doing this. Also,
I heard that. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Can you go into more Mailchimp? I just recently heard that Mailchimp was censoring alt-writers as well as conservatives. Can you explain that? This is something I just heard last week.
Well, Mailchimp is a program that lets you send email messages to thousands and thousands of people. And that's something that you can't do with a standard Gmail or AOL mail or something like that. But what they've suddenly done is they've gone through apparently all of their accounts and they've found the people that they don't like, and they have just stopped our service. I know several other sites that happened to. But of course, the worst is what happened to the Daily Stormer and also Stormfront. I believe their domain names were completely obliterated.
their domain. I didn't know I didn't know that was possible or legal. First of all, let me just, before I get to Stormfront, were you able to download or export all of your emails after being canceled by Mailchimp?
We always had our list of email connections offline.
Okay, great.
So we didn't lose anything.
Good.
But in our case, also, we were suddenly told by PayPal that they weren't going to do our transactions anymore. And the worst thing about this is we have people who give us monthly contributions. And they just do automatic recurrent donations. And that's one of the most dependable sources of income. We can plan around that. And all of a sudden, they just stopped. So we've been in the process of trying to fix that situation. But this is, ever since the rally in Charlottesville that went wrong, there has been an absolutely concerted effort.
But you had nothing to do with that.
Nope, nothing to do with it. Doesn't matter. They just clamped it down on everybody that they claim is a white supremacist, whatever that expression means.
And a Daily Stormer, I've learned something. Didn't even think that was possible. I thought when you purchased the domain name that it is yours. I didn't think that it could be taken if people didn't like the content that you put on your website associated with that domain name.
That's right. It's pretty spooky, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had always known that internet service providers, they can decide that they don't want to do business with you, but there are probably thousands and thousands of them. And if one doesn't like you, you can always go to another.
Yep.
But that was news to me, too, that the very idea of our domain name, amran.com, could be obliterated, could be just exterminated, and amran.com is just gone for good. What a spooky thing. I suppose at the same time, if they wanted to, they could give it to the Southern Poverty Law.
Oh, Lord!
Yeah. So that when you go to amran.com, what you get is
that would be awful.
their poison pen letter about this wicked guy, Jared Taylor.
Oh.
I mean, what's to stop it?
How does it? I want to go. Speaking of, since you said the wicked person, Jared Taylor, you're such a nice, soft-spoken person. I think people really resent what comes out your mouth, and when I look at you in your interview, you're non-confrontational. However, people really try to push you in the corner of white supremacists, of racists, really trying to paint you as a bad guy. Does that take a toll on you after a while?
You know, when I first got in this business, it did bother me that so many people treated me as a moral inferior. After an interview in which somebody would just try to beat me up with every possible word and they would speak in the most contemptuous tones towards me, it did bother me. But after doing this for, gosh, I've been doing this for 27 years now, I'm pretty much used to it. And those things just roll off my back. So no, I would rather, of course, that people at least made an attempt to understand what I'm trying to say. But it no longer bothers me when they consider me as someone who is just basically and fundamentally immoral. I know that I'm not. And I've had so many really ignorant and ill-informed people say the same thing that it really doesn't bother me anymore.
How long did it take it for you to get that thick skin to the point where, because I find this very, I like that that's happened to you, but that's one of the weaknesses I have a problem with white people. They care so much what strangers think about them. And I just don't understand. I'm trying to get an understanding, like, when is that a phase, or that it's going to always be with most of them?
You know, after all, human beings are a kind of herd animal. We do want to be loved by everybody in sight. That's just part of human nature. And it took me, I would say, a good maybe 10 or 15 years before I became completely indifferent to this moral leper treatment. And perhaps white people are more susceptible to this kind of treatment. I don't know. I know that Asians tend to be very conformist. The Japanese, who I know very well, they like very much to be part of the group. Being part of the group is really important to them. But most white people, I think, if it took me 10 or 15 years, I think a lot of white people are just never going to get to that point because they're not going to expose themselves repeatedly to that kind of treatment. That's what it took for me to grow a thick skin.
Wow, that's disappointing to hear, because I grew up really rough, and as a little girl, up until the age of 11, in Southeast DC, which was known as the murder capital of the world during the time I was being raised there, in the ghettos there, in Anacostia. And I moved with my dad in a middle class area in Maryland. And going from DC to Maryland, I've always had to deal with being name calling, fighting, constantly fighting. A lot of things that I experienced as a child has prepared me to have a thick skin, to where when strangers, now it's different if somebody you care and respect calls you a different name, but when strangers call me a coon, a house nigger, a bed wench, when they call me all these names, it doesn't faze me. I really don't care. And then when I talk to my white subscribers, their biggest complaint is, well, Tree, how do you deal with when people won't listen to you because, you're white? And if you try to bring them facts about the FBI statistics, or when you tell them that white people do have a culture, they tell you, no, you're not. You're just a white supremacist. You're a racist. And tell them, I said, why do you care if they call you a racist? Was like, but, well, that's not who I am. I said, so what? I said, and it's a kind of like a back and forth of, well, I don't like them calling me racist. I'm not one. I said, you know what? People call me coon. I don't care about that. So just understand you're not going to please everybody. And they really do care about it. And no matter what I say to them, it doesn't soften the blow about being called these names. So when you tell me it took you 10 to 15 years, oh God.
Well, that's it's an interesting question as to whether or not that is an individual difference between you and me, which I can imagine that it could be, or whether it's in general, you could make that distinction between black people and white people. I'm not sure which it would be. I'm sure there's an enormous amount of individual distinction between people in all different groups, but it is possible that there are more black people who just completely shrug off any kind of personal insult compared to white people. That's entirely possible too. And maybe your background, as you say, has something to do with it. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Japan, where I was the only honky for miles and miles around, and lived in Japan until I was 16 years old. But for the most part, I didn't, some people would make fun of me because I was different, and they would pick fights with me because I was different.
Oh, you had people pick fights with you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. No
Oh.
question about it. But for the most part, I got along really well. And I still have friends, my old classmates from grade school. Whenever I'm in Japan, I haven't been back for a while, but we get together and have a great time. I look back on my childhood with a great deal of positive feelings. It was a wonderful time. I wasn't one of these guys who liked to fight, but I was sure prepared to fight if I had to defend my honor by doing so. And as I say, being so different, being the sea of Japanese children, being the only standout guy with blue eyes and light hair, and I was taller than the rest of them, it was impossible to overlook my presence.
How did you not develop a complex?
Well, what sort of complex would you have expected me to develop?
Well, the fact that everyone around you have dark hair, dark eyes, they have olive skin. You are the tallest one, and from somebody who's also extremely tall. I'm 6'3". It gives you the point where, hey, I'm not the same as these people. Maybe there's something wrong with me.
I never felt that. I guess it's because I was living with my parents, and I have two brothers, and we were all Americans, and I knew very well that we were transplanted Americans living in Japan. So I never felt as though, although I was certainly different, I didn't ever feel as though there was something wrong with me for being different.
Okay, all right. And you're fluent in Japanese.
Yes.
Any other language you speak?
I speak French quite well, and I'm more proud of the fact that I speak French because I really had to study that as a foreign language, whereas Japanese just happened to me naturally.
Right.
I grew up in Japan. People ask me, well, gosh, isn't Japanese a really difficult language? And I say, well, there are 100 million Japanese who speak it, and as a matter of fact, you can go to Japan, even little children speak it, so how hard can it be? But that's how I learned Japanese, just like the little children. It wasn't any particular effort.
Yeah.
But French, I had to sure enough go to school and study, and I lived in French-speaking countries for quite a few years, and that's how I got to the point where I can speak really quite good French.
I can speak German because I lived in Germany for 5 years, and basically I think what you did was a little harder because you were not am I assuming you were not in France at the time when you was learning French? No. Okay, I was living in the environment where German was speaking all around me. Deutsch was spoken all around me. So therefore it was a little bit easier for me to learn the language. And let's talk about Germany really quickly before I move on to something else. Here's the thing. I left Germany angry. That they allowed their country to just be invaded like this. And when I look at countries like Germany, France, the UK, and Sweden, out of all places, it's as if the white guilt there is rampant. It's at the all-time high. And when I look at a country like Poland, I see people who don't care about being politically correct. They actually have no problem hurting people's feelings. They are adamantly against diversity and multiculturalism, and they don't care if you don't like it. My question to you is, why is it that when I look at the two different white cultures, I admire the Poles because they're strong. They're like, no, Poles for the Polish. We're going to keep our religion. We're going to keep our culture. We are going to limit. We're not going to be the minority in our own country, where you have Germans who are like celebrating the fact that they will. And I totally get why, but I want to get your understanding why it's all these other countries that I named are okay with allowing their country to no longer be the France that it used to be, no longer to be Britain that it used to be, no longer be Sweden that it used to be. Why are they okay with that? And the Polish people are like, not going to happen. What do you think the difference is between the two white cultures is?
I've thought about that a lot. And what you'll find is that really all of the countries that were behind what we called the Iron Curtain, all the communist countries and all the countries that were in the Soviet orbit, they have not absorbed all of these self-hating poisons. I think it has to do with several things. One is that they were not exposed to this liberal, egalitarian, racial propaganda that really emanated originally from the United States. The United States had a huge influence on Western Europe and all of the white countries all around the world, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. I think all of them have been hugely influenced by the American experience and the American process of developing and cultivating and wallowing in and glorying in white guilt.
Yeah.
That didn't happen on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Those people were cut off from our kind of propaganda of that kind until 1989. So that's one thing. Another is that they lived under a propaganda regime, a clear propaganda regime. And I think they learned a kind of natural distrust from the mainstream narrative about life in general. So they are skeptical about what they read when it comes from big media. At the same time, from about 1986 to 1989, what appeared to be very, very stable, long-lasting regimes completely collapsed and fell apart. So they know that nothing lasts forever. So for that reason, I think they have a general skepticism. First of all, they were not exposed to the poisons. They lived under a regime of genuine censorship, which taught them to be suspicious. And they know that a regime, no matter how weird or bad or apparently stable, is not going to last forever. Now, another theory, and I'm not sure I know enough about the different kinds of Christianity to know whether this makes sense, but some people I've spoken to think that Orthodox Christianity has some kind of immunizing effect. Poland, as you know, is still a pretty Christian country.
Yeah, very, yeah.
Now Germany is not.
Yeah, it's
France is decreasingly increasingly non-Christian.
Yeah.
But you go to the Czech Republic, you go to Hungary, you go to Slovenia. Those places still have something of a rootedness in Christianity, in Orthodox Christianity. So that may be part of it too.
That's a very interesting take on that. Okay, here's another question. I just wrote off Germany. However, what is your take? Do you think there's a strong chance Merkel's going to win again? And France already won. They already got Macron. And I think Sweden got is it another 2 years or is it next year where they're going to start their election? I'm not sure.
I don't remember exactly, but we'll see.
Yeah. So under these circumstances, do you think they can even bounce back, or is it just done? Are they just DONE done?
I would hate to think that any of the European countries is really gone for good. Germany, of course, is really the heart of Europe. Culturally, demographically, economically, industrially, it would be a terrible, terrible thing if it got to the point where there's just no comeback for European culture and European people right in the heart of Europe. It would grieve me immensely to think that. We'll have to see how these next elections go. Of course, Germany has this terrible burden of Nazism to have to live down. They have been hanging their heads for a long time, apologizing for everything in sight. My impression is that younger Germans are sick of this. Now, whether or not enough of them are going to be prepared to act to save their country is another matter, and I just can't say. I've never really lived in Germany. I don't speak German. I don't feel as though I have any inside track on what's going on there. It would be lovely if Merkel were unhorsed. But as you say, it looks as though she's going to cruise to yet another victory, despite the terrible, terrible betrayal that she's guilty of to her people. What this tells me, though, is that, well, the fact that, yes, we got Macron rather than Le Pen in France. And when the Dutch elections were held about a year ago, everybody was hoping that Geert Wilders' party was going to come in number one. Well, it came in number two.
Yeah.
And then there were the presidential elections in Austria, and we all hoped that this Norbert Hofer guy from the Austrian Freedom Party was going to be president. That would have been wonderful. Well, he got, 48% of the vote? So, sensible nationalist ideas are making progress. But this is not something that's going to happen overnight. Orthodoxy and globalism and anti-white hatred is going to put up a tremendous fight. They're going to fight all the way. So it just means that we have to keep fighting. We have to be just as determined as ever. This is not going to be an easy thing. And let us hope that at least Merkel will lose a certain amount of seats in the Reichstag. Let's hope that the vote for her is considerably less than before, even if she does remain in power. This is going to be a long-term struggle.
I'm afraid that that Germany is going to go down the toilet, and the reason I say that is because for them to consider the AfD a Nazi party is really pathetic, and the young children. And I know because I have adopted a German family when I was over there, living there for 5 years. I consider them, I'm not close to my biological family. I consider this German family to be my actual family. A lot of tragic things have happened to them, which I won't go into right now, but many of them have left Germany for their own safety. But here's the thing. With my nephew and my two nephews, when I do my best to teach them about being proud of being German and teaching them German culture, and there's a lot of things that German people have brought all around the world, the things that they invented, it's undone when they go around other German people and they have to hear how, and I keep telling them once and they listen to me because of the fact that I'm black and I'm from America, and I say you had nothing to do with that, okay? You weren't even thought about being born back then, and actually it sinks in, and maybe it will mature as they get older and they'll remember that I said these things to them. But it's like they get when they talk, and children talk and they express themselves, they get punished and they get shamed for doing so.
Well, human beings are very, very malleable. And if we are told over and over and over that the sky is green or that 2 + 2 is 5, many of us are going to end up believing those things. And today, what white children hear all over the world, except for these Eastern European countries, is that white people are really a very doubtful and defective species that has wreaked havoc throughout the world for all non-white people ever since there was any kind of contact between whites and non-whites. You hear this often enough, and many white people are going to believe it. And of course, this is also one of the explanations as to why when young white people in America or anywhere else in the white world realize that this is all a pack of lies, they are so hopping mad. And some of them really move into kind of violent and intemperate language as a result. But when you have had this sense of guilt and shame that your ancestors were bad people, when this has been rammed down your throat ever since you were in kindergarten practically, then when the truth emerges, then it is not surprising that you'd be bitter and angry and wanting payback of a certain kind.
Right.
Now those sentiments, I think, can come out in unfortunate and ugly ways, but it is not all that surprising once you realize the kind of terrible propaganda that many of those young white men have been put through.
Do you think that what happened in Charlotte is also an expression of anger?
Oh, I think a certain number of the people that Unite the Right are angry. A certain number of them, I think, were there looking for a fight with the Antifa. To what extent those people characterized the entire rally, it's just impossible to say.
Yeah.
And of course, if there are 200 Confederate battle flags and then one Nazi flag, well, then the media is going to say that this was a Nazi rally.
Yep.
Now, I wasn't there, and even people who were there, no one knew everyone who was there. No one was in a position to say in any accurate sort of way, well, these people are just sort of Southern heritage people. Well, these people are out and out Hitler admirers. It's impossible to say. But of course, for the media, all it takes is one. And then that makes it a Ku Klux Klan rally or a neo-Nazi rally.
Right. Why do you think why do you think that with the fact that the left painted this boogeyman of neo-Nazis, 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 okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you have some members, hashtag not all, that go ahead and troll that perception. They're not neo-Nazis, okay? But they go ahead with the Roman salute, and they go ahead with the Nazi flags, and they go ahead and they instill this belief system, or sometimes even fear, to which we call sometimes trolling. But I believe that first of all, there were some bona fide Klansmen there. My thing is, why are some, like not all, and I'm not necessarily even particularly talking about the Charlottesville one. I'm just talking about in general. Why would they even fuel that fire?
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean why would even just a few of them show up to give the media an excuse?
Yeah.
To tell the whole thing? Well, I understand that Jason Kessler, who was the man who organized the Charlottesville rally, he put out the word he didn't want any kind of Nazi insignia. He didn't want any kind of pointy hats, no KKK stuff. But it was not easy to control that. He understood perfectly well that as soon as there was just one single SS rune, then it was going to be a neo-Nazi rally. He understood that. But when you get, I don't know, were there 1,000 people
there? Was
there?
1,000 people there.
Yeah, it's impossible to control. On the other hand, I suspect that some of the more or less ordinary racially conscious white people who walking by and they saw that Nazi flag, nobody wants to be the schoolmarm and go up to him and say, hey, put that damn thing away. Nobody wants to play that game either, even if they were uncomfortable seeing it. People talk about these things being free speech rallies and say, well, okay, I guess free speech includes Nazis too. I think it would have been an uncomfortable thing for someone who was not directly part of organizing that rally to go up to some guy who might have been waving a KKK banner or something and say, put that away. So these things just have to be very carefully controlled because you give the media just a hint of the stuff that they particularly hate,
right?
And that's what they'll run with.
I think it could have been controlled, and understand I'm speaking from a alpha type of mentality to where if I am an effective leader and I have that many people there, and it was a lot, 1,000 people, what I'm going to do is assign squad leaders, and they would have 20 to 25 people, maybe 50 each squad. And if they see anyone with that flag, if they see, but here we go again, Mr. Taylor, we have to get to the point where we have to be okay with being the bad guy.
Right.
And I know I have no problem being the bad guy. However, I'm sure there's other white people who feel the same way, don't mind saying, hey, you either put that away or get out of formation, and make sure that no one does the Roman salute, and make sure that to me it seemed like it was accepted because I don't see anybody even thinking about saying, hey, put that down, because to me it seemed like it was accepted behavior because it worked the first time in Virginia in the other protests that they had.
Well, I know that there was a Klan protest in Charlottesville, but that was strictly Klan, and that was a very small turnout.
Yeah.
And there was also a protest to save the Lee Memorial that took place back in May, I believe.
Right. Yep.
Now, I don't think they had any KKK.
No, they didn't.
They don't have any swastikas.
No.
And there was no violence either.
No.
The other side, the Antifa, didn't come out on that occasion. So these things are hard to control. I think that, and as I say, it's impossible to know. Now, maybe there was a fairly large swath of sympathy for the swastika flag. I don't know. I suspect not. I would be surprised if that were the case, but maybe there was. As I say, I wasn't there. There's no one who knows every one of those thousands of people who can really...
Well, they're not confrontational. I mean, let's understand. Remember now, like I said, white people don't want to, not all, they don't want to be the bad guy. They don't want to act like that they're not the team, they're not a team player and go against the grain and say, maybe you shouldn't even have that flag on. Oh, what, you a cuck? They're afraid of being called names again. Here we go again.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I just wish they
Yep.
just get a backbone about that. Yeah, that's all that
Well,
is.
exactly right. And there's something called discipline,
Yes.
and you have to adhere to discipline. And if Jason Kessler had really thought about it seriously, I suppose he would have organized some sort of means to enforce those rules that he laid out to begin with. It didn't happen, and now everybody is paying the price.
Right.
Of course, the other aspect of Charlottesville that no one could have anticipated was this guy
Exactly.
driving the car.
Right. Right.
I mean, and once something like that happens, once there are deaths, well, oh boy,
Yeah.
you know that the media are going to talk about that and nothing else nonstop. And especially if it looks like this guy was a Hitler admirer or whatever it was, the circumstances don't matter. Some people think that he was attacked by Antifa and he panicked.
Yeah.
Some people think he deliberately drove in. We don't know yet. But if by the time it comes out at trial that he was panicking because he was attacked, the damage has been done.
Yeah.
That woman's death and those injuries, those are going to be hung around every racially conscious white person for the rest of our lives. It's like Dylan Roof, you know, it doesn't make a difference if he was schizophrenic, doesn't make any difference if he acted entirely on his own. Every white person who says that white people have certain legitimate rights is going to have to answer for Dylan Roof. You have to, there are certain crazy things that are going to happen. There's no way we can always control them.
Here's something I want to, speaking of Dylan Roof, you know, I think the right and the alt-right let stuff go too fast. Let me explain what I mean by that. Why aren't we continually reminding the left about Micah Xavier Johnson, who came to Dallas specifically to shoot and kill white police officers because they are white? This is what he wanted to do. This is what he said he was going to do. And he did it. Okay. Now, the thing about it is, I never shut up about this, but other people shut up about this. And see, the left, they will never shut up about Dylan Roof. And now, depending on whatever happened with James Field Jr., they're never going to shut up about that. But how come we let it go about Micah Xavier Johnson? How come we let Gavin Long, another black supremacist who set out to shoot white cops? And all of this is courtesy of Black Lives Matter. Okay, and the thing about it is that we have been, which I'm really shocked about this, is that Black Lives Matter is not really much of a threat anymore. Believe it or not, it has been whitewashed. There's way more white people in Black Lives Matter than it is black people at this moment in time. However, the thing about it is that we have, those of us on the right have not constantly uttered these words and reminded the left about, well, even we got a new one, Mr. Taylor. We got a new one with the Bernie bro who shot Republican Representative Scalise.
I think his name, yeah, Scalise.
Yeah, and so it's like we kind of let stuff go, and I think that's the downfall where the left never shuts up about it.
Well, I think it's not so much that we don't talk about these things. The problem is that the big media, the television, the big newspapers, the huge media websites, they are all part of the left. And so we can shout all we like about those black supremacist killers of white policemen, but their voices are louder than ours. And so ordinary folks who just sort of drift along and only hear what comes in from the loudest loudspeakers are not going to be reminded of those things.
Yeah, good point. Speaking of interviews, when you did that interview with the female from CNN, first of all, I was so afraid for you because I was like, she was real big. She was just going to just basically filibuster you throughout the entire interview.
No.
But she was cordial. She was nice, you know.
Yeah, she was very nice.
Yeah.
She was definitely one of the nicer people to interview me. And in fact, I wish that we'd gotten this on tape, but at one point, the cameras were not rolling, but she says, I came to your house. Now she was sure enough at my house. She says, I came to your house just expecting to find you to be just a horrible person, but you're really nice. I wish I'd had that on.
That's too bad. But well, was your it looks like you had your own recording crew. Is that what I saw too? Because
Yes,
okay,
yes.
do you do that as a precaution because they could edit it to make you look like a white supremacist or racist?
Well, we do it for two reasons. One is so that if it is edited in a deceptive way, we have the full context. And the other reason we do it is that the full conversation is often of great interest
Yes.
to our supporters. People like to see the kinds of questions, the kind of exchange that we have.
So during that interview with the young lady from CNN, she asked you if you could rate our President Donald Trump, and you gave him a B minus. And you was a little hard on him, I believe, because you felt that he was not. You was disappointed that he didn't deal with DACA at the moment, and I know that was a campaign promise. He said he was going to do the first day, and the reason I thought she was a little too hard on him is because he has so many things against him. Specifically, you have the Never Trumpers who are on the Republican side. When he issued an executive order for the travel ban, you had this judge in Hawaii who put a stop to it. And then also when he tried to get the budget for the wall, Congress wouldn't approve it. And there was just so many things. He couldn't get a lot of work done because everybody was fighting against him. And now when I look at I never lost faith in our president. I knew that even though I didn't understand a lot of things he did, I knew there was a method to the madness because he's playing chess and he's in it for the long haul and he's very strategic. But a lot of people were very impatient with him and disappointed with him. And I thought it was just unfair. Do you think that was? Do you think that's a true assessment? And also, hold on, one more question. I would like you to add to that. What would you give him? What would his grade be now?
Well, those are both very good questions. If he really is going to dump DACA now, the executive amnesty, which is what he's rumored to be about to do, that would certainly improve his grade. I do not understand why he didn't do it the first day like he said he would. The other thing that disappointed me is that there's not been one peep out of Donald Trump about birthright citizenship. I think of all of the really solid things that he could have done, getting Congress to at least pass some law saying that it disagreed with an interpretation of the 13th Amendment according to which any child of an illegal immigrant born in U.S. soil becomes a U.S. citizenship. I don't think it would be all that hard. I think there would even be some Democratic support for something like that.
You think Democrats? They need that for their votes. They replace black people with the immigrants.
Yes, they have. But to me, there is so much opposition, even among ordinary Democratic voters. And there are even a lot of Hispanics who think that that's a lousy idea. So I think that you could go somewhere with that kind of legislation. He didn't attempt that at all. He spent all this time with Obamacare. He's going to spend all this time with tax reform. I'm not saying those things are unimportant. And perhaps from a long-term strategic point of view, he thinks he has to have some legislative victories under his belt before he can move into some of these other more controversial areas. But we'll just have to see. And at the end of the day, I must say, Donald Trump gets an A+++++, because he's not Hillary Clinton. But given the Donald Trump he could have been, I still give him a B-.
Can you imagine how our country could would be if she was president right now? Do you? Oh God!
Just the fact. Well, for example, even though Donald Trump has not gone about trying to deport every single illegal immigrant. He said he was going to do that. Everyone, even the allegedly law-abiding ones, even the ones who've been here for a while. He said they were all going to go. He's not been working very hard on that. But the mere fact that he is president means that so far few people are even trying to come across the border illegally.
Yes.
There were these huge gangs of Haitians that were showing up. Excuse me.
That's okay.
They're not showing up anymore. And as it turns out, a lot of them are trying to sneak across the border illegally to get into Canada.
Yes, Canada got the problem now. Canada has the problem now.
Yes. Although I don't want Canada to have the problem. I want them to go back to Haiti. But in any case.
But Canada is coddling them. Canada is doing the same thing that France and Germany and Sweden is doing.
I know. They suffer from the white man's disease in the worst possible way. But so, yeah, the fact that he's in office, if I were a legitimately thoughtful and grateful man, I would get up every morning and I would give a silent prayer of thanksgiving for the fact that Donald Trump is in the White House. But I guess I am not sufficiently thankful and reverent, and I do not do that. I find myself thinking about the things he could have done, the things he should have done. Maybe I'm ungenerous. It sounds as though you are more generous to him than I am.
I am very generous because I'm very thankful for our president because of the fact that Hillary is a monster. And she might as well have a burqa on. She was so in love with what was going on with Islam, and she's getting millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in payouts. So therefore, I am very thankful that she's not in office. Plus, I'm a member of the NRA, and she wanted to implement more gun control, take our ARs away, and wanted to. And not only that, but she was carrying on Obama's legacy of catering to Black Lives Matter.
Yes, no question about that.
Yeah.
And, this is a trite thing to say, but it is the Supreme Court appointments that live on long after a president is gone.
Yeah.
And every one of Hillary's appointments would have been an Elena Kagan or a Sonia Sotomayor. And my suspicion is that once you got enough of them on the Supreme Court, they would read the First Amendment in such a way as to make it entirely possible to legally ban both me and you.
Yes, absolutely. Do you think that that it will get better for us on the right to exercise freedom of speech without? I'm talking about here in America. I'm not talking about the UK where they don't, and in Germany where they don't have freedom of speech. But here it's in our Constitution. But the only thing is we're punished by private companies. Do you think that eventually will stop?
That is a very, very important question, particularly right now, when these very powerful private companies have decided that they don't even need the law. They don't even need a commissar in a peaked hat off scene telling them what to do. They don't even need the Stasi police officer telling them they're going to be in trouble if they do this or they don't do that. Entirely on their own, they are taking it upon themselves to set the boundaries of accepted discourse in the United States of America. And the idea that this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we all speak out for ourselves and rugged individualists and all that, this is really quite astonishing. I frankly, I do not know which way it's going to go. I would like to think that Google and YouTube and PayPal and all of these people, the people who dole out the domain names, are going to be eventually embarrassed. But the capacity of the left to be embarrassed seems to be less than zero.
Yeah.
Nothing embarrasses.
Nothing. Well, do you see how they look? You have these obese women who get naked on the subway and they have a Sharpie painted on their body, drawn on their body, "I'm fat and love it." And it's like, ew, you are okay with looking like that. So if you're not embarrassed by that, there's nothing that's going to make you feel ashamed.
No. And if Google fires this Damore guy for saying that Google has become an ideological echo chamber and proving that he was right by firing him, then no, they are incapable of shame. And I know a lot of people who just don't expect the left ever to be capable of shame, ever to be able to think in terms of actual principle, ever to realize that if you start censoring this part of the internet, next it's going to be that part of the internet, and maybe eventually their part of the internet, and who think that the only way to fight back is through just the most bare knuckles kind of legal battle. But I'm not sure that would succeed either, because these are private companies.
Yeah.
In some respects, I'm a kind of libertarian guy. You know, if I have a restaurant and I don't want to serve left-handed people, I think I should have that right.
I think so too.
Yeah. And if YouTube says to me, hey, we don't like the cut of your jib, we're going to destroy your channel. Well, at some abstract level, they have that right. The trouble is, if you're talking about YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, these companies are so big.
They're so big. They actually are monopoly. So that's what makes it so unfair. See, if you refuse to serve someone who's left-handed, they can go to the restaurant a block away and actually get service. But like, what is another alternative to YouTube? As of right now, there isn't any. I know other people saying there's alt media, but there's nothing quite as equivalent to YouTube at the moment.
No. In a way, they are really like public utilities.
Yes.
After all, you have not yet heard of the phone company saying, hey, we're just not going to serve this bad guy, Jared Taylor.
Right.
They are regulated. They don't have the right to do that. My electric company can't say, ooh, SPLC says you're a hater. Oh, we're going to cut off your electricity. No, that day has not yet come. But perhaps it could. If a Sotomayor Kagan type of Supreme Court says, yeah, that's just fine. These guys are wicked. They deserve to die. Cut off their electricity. That could perhaps come, but you can't do that now.
Right.
But the fact is, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, in effect, they are the electric company. There is nobody else to turn to if they cut you off. It's a very, very bad state of affairs. Now, I know, are you aware of this black female duo called Diamond and
Silk? Yes, I do. Diamond and Silk, and they're actually suing YouTube because YouTube has demonetized 95% of their content for supporting Trump. And the good thing about this is that our president loves Diamond and Silk. And so I know that once this happened to them, I know that our president has to be aware of what's happening to the rest of us here.
Well, I sure hope so. And the fact is, though, if Diamond and Silk succeed in that suit, they will be making new law because they will be, in effect, forcing a privately owned company to act like a utility. And in that case, I think you could come up with some sort of formula according to which if you dominate more than 95% of the market for something or more than 80% or whatever it is, then you, in effect, are a monopoly. And it used to be that the Department of Justice used to break up monopolies. Mm-hmm. Certainly monopolies that had less than 85% of the market, Standard Oil, for example, or AT&T, the telephone company. The Justice Department came in and said, no, you've got too much of the pie. You all are throwing your weight around too much. This kind of thinking certainly could be applied to something like YouTube.
Yeah, I think so too. But the only thing about lawsuits, they take forever, so we won't even know what's going to happen for another year or two.
Oh, that's right. And they could appeal. There could be.
Oh yeah, I forgot about appealing.
Oh gosh, yes. But see, again, you would like to think that when all of this stuff comes out in the light of day, and when something goes to trial, and you've got competent lawyers on both sides, really the facts do come out and go on the record. Perhaps I'm naive. All of my friends say that I'm the most naive, really just hopelessly Pollyanna-ish guy in the world. But I like to think that even these crazy lefties could realize that what they're doing is so unprincipled, just so shameful. Now, as I say, that could be completely an illusion, but I'd like to think that it would take more than 5 years worth of appeals and Supreme Court decisions for some kind of sense to break through the terrible fog that surrounds those big companies.
Yeah. Oh, this is such, but I will say something positive. we will look back on this and say, yeah, this will all be taken care of in our best interest, and we'll look at this as our oppressive moment where, yeah, I remember when YouTube used to censor my stuff and things like that. Hey, I have another question, and then I got to talk about. I know we're winding down, but I got to ask you something about white flight. But before I do that, how does it feel? I was doing your research. I was looking at. You have 5 books. Is it just 5 books that you've written, or am I missing any?
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah. How does it feel to know that you have 5 books? You have done all these interviews. You're leaving a wealth of information and material behind that. When you make that transition, that your stuff will be researched and studied and debated over for decades. How does that make you feel?
Oh, Ms. Tree, I don't want to exaggerate my influence. I've been doing this a long time, and it is very gratifying when people come up to me and say, "You really opened my eyes.
Yeah.
You made it so clear." It's very gratifying. But many people have been making these points for many years. And it's nice to get a certain amount of recognition, but I don't want to over-exaggerate my role or my impact.
I'm sorry, but you were the ones I hate using the word red pill, but you were the one who red pilled me in detail about race and IQ. And this is coming from you have actually, because, I've seen your footage for when you used to be on talk shows when I used to watch TV many years ago. Okay, yeah. So I'm very familiar with you and your work, and I'll tell you this: as a black woman who was raised in the ghetto, who moved from the black poverty ghetto to the middle class, then go to an all-black university, and then also become a police officer, to leave the policing field, to go to another country, to see how black people there behave who are native to Germany, native to France, native to Italy, and see that there's something, and they have a lot of things in common. First of all, the lack of accountability is mind-blowing, okay? It's always the white man's fault. It's like a same damn song all over the world. And then when I look at my life and my environment, I didn't get insulted by the teachings and the scientific data behind race and IQ, nor did I get insulted by the bell curve. It was an aha moment. It made me go, oh, that makes sense. It really did. It really added up, and it's not a put down. It just made everything. It put the puzzles together, which made me understand why there was a common behavior worldwide with certain races. And I also was amazed at how, because Asians have the highest IQ, I was just fascinated how they are successful wherever they go. Hashtag not all, but on average they are. You see what I'm saying? And that's so right. it was like, oh wow! I was actually excited and actually I actually started to research this even more. And you were a big key to that. And hence why I was so excited that you accepted this interview with me, because I admire you so much. And I thought to myself, I looked at all this stuff. I know you're being humble, okay? I got it, all right? Well, but I'm like, you have no idea that maybe you don't want, maybe you think you're just a little speck in a sea, but of sand. But it's like you have so much material that is going to educate thousands and thousands and maybe even millions of people for some time now.
Well, I hope you're right. In any case, when it comes to race and IQ, as I'm sure you know, 99.9% of white people are absolutely terrified of the idea of speaking honestly about this subject with black people. Yeah. They think that black people are just going to blow up, or just their heads are going to explode. And I sort of worried about that myself at first, but I addressed a number of college audiences on this very subject back when I was more successful at getting myself invited to speak to universities.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I looked out over this mixed race audience, it was maybe at least a third black. And I'm about to go to the podium and talk about race differences in IQ, and it's more likely genetic. And I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be so awful. And it's true. The first couple of black people who stood up said, this is all racist.
Yeah.
But then the other black people, they kept me on my feet for 45 minutes asking very intelligent, straightforward questions. And then they would come up to me afterwards and shake my hand. They'd say, well, Mr. Taylor, that was absolutely fascinating. That was a great lecture, with real warmth in their voice.
Yeah.
And that baffled me at first, but I went through this experience 2 or 3 times, and then it began to dawn on me, they probably really appreciated not being talked down to.
Yes.
I mean, this is a taboo subject. They're interested in it. I know a lot about it, and I can give a good talk about it. And I think they probably felt a kind of bond with me as probably the first white man with whom they'd had a genuinely honest conversation about race. And they were not hostile to me at all. And as I explain this to some of my white friends who are convinced, that every black person you talk to about this is going to want to slit your throat, I said, look, black people aren't stupid.
No.
They look around the world.
Yeah.
And they see, well, there must be some explanation other than this boogeyman white man.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it just, as you say, the world just suddenly makes a lot more sense if you look at it in realistic terms. And we just white people have this absolute phobia that the truth will be just too much for these poor black people. This is just another way of saying that they can't take life like men and women. We have to treat them like children forever. This is nuts.
I trust you over anyone who wants to sugarcoat the truth or want to cuddle me and hide the truth from me. I trust you because you are straightforward. Anyone who can be honest with me about the truth and science and statistics and really they're not caring if, not saying that they don't care, it's just that they honor the truth over my feelings, okay? Like Ben Shapiro say, facts over feels. So it's like, listen, here are the facts. I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable, but here are the facts. I am mature enough to say, okay, and actually appreciative because it's like I said, it makes sense. It really makes sense. And I trust a white person more who's more brutally honest with me than someone who wants to actually conceal the truth or actually hide it or cater to me and by sugarcoating it because they think I can't handle it. And true, that's true. There's some blacks who can't, all right? But there's many of us who can, and we're okay with it.
Well, I think, in effect, Google and YouTube, they are saying to black people, you can't handle the facts.
Yeah.
I think that is, in effect, what they're saying. What they're saying to white people is, you all can't handle the facts either. And if you really do think that blacks on average are less intelligent than white people, you're going to go out and lynch them or murder them or want to enslave them. This is crazy.
Yes.
And they're saying to black people, you can't handle the facts. If you really get told that on average you are less intelligent, then you're going to start shooting each other, getting each other pregnant, going on drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a preposterous and absolutely contemptuous view of everybody in America that makes them want to hide the facts.
Right. Last question, and I'm going to let you go. White flight. I'm a victim of it. My neighborhood was majority white, and when I left to come back to Germany after being there for 5 years, many of my white neighbors are gone. I'm very angry with them because I'm going to leave too, but unfortunately, because I left my house vacant for all those years and didn't. And I've learned the hard way that if you want to keep a house operational, you have to have people living in it, because when it's empty, it breaks down. I didn't know this. I wasn't taught these things. So I'm learning it the hard way. So I'm having to repair my home so that I can move out of my circumstances. So here's my last question. When are white people going to stop running away and stand their grounds and fight back?
That's a question I've been asking for a long, long time. I wish I had a good answer to that question.
Yeah.
I think young white people are beginning to think in those terms. And this, of course, goes to the heart of the incoherence of white people. The great Joe Sobran once said that in their mating and migratory habits, members of the Ku Klux Klan are indistinguishable from liberals. And he's absolutely right. You can be liberal as the day is long, or claim to be, but you don't want to be the last white man in a Mexican neighborhood.
No.
They all clear out. And yet, they would never dare lift their voices against an immigration policy that is turning more and more neighborhoods into the very places they would refuse to live. This is part of the just suicidal incoherence, inability of white people to think straight. So, of course, it is very much my idea to tell men of the West, stand and fight. This is your territory. This is your land. This is your heritage, your culture. This has been my message for 27 years. And I think gradually it's getting through. But when enough white people, you can't just do it in ones and twos. You have to have communities that act together. And we're not there yet.
Well, when will you be there?
That is in the lap of the gods.
You know what, Mr. I hope you would accept another invitation from me in the future. I didn't even get a chance. Look. I got all these questions here. I didn't even get a chance to ask you everything I wanted. You're just a wealth of information. And no, that's okay. I wanted to just be an hour, and we have met that hour. And that means I have an excuse to invite you back in the future. So
well, that would be my pleasure.
Yeah,
let me know anytime.
Absolutely, definitely. I definitely got to have you back on. So hang on for me. I'm going to go ahead and sign out. So first of all, I'm going to have those of you who are watching this. As you can see on the screen, I have Mr. Taylor's Twitter handle. I have the website, and in the description I will have links to all his books, as well as some other information, as well as the direct link to the website as well that you can click on for those of you who don't want to write stuff down from the screen. So all of his contact information and all the listings to his books will be available in the description box. So please be sure to check that out. So once again, Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for joining me here today with me, Tree, from treeoflogic.com. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Well, so do I, Ms. Tree. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, no problem. Later, taters!